Practical Anarchy, A Guide to Self-Determination, Dicky. Chapter 3, Anarchy in the 20th Century and Beyond. Part 13, Into the 20th Century, Repression and Resilience. The new century did not greet anarchism with open arms. By 1900, anarchists had a global presence, unions, clubs, newspapers, but they also carried a reputation for bombs and assassins. States responded with fear and fury. The anarchist menace became an excuse for surveillance, censorship and prisons across Europe and the Americas. In the US, the execution of the Haymarket martyrs in 1887 still hung heavy. By the turn of the century, immigrants carrying anarchist pamphlets were watched, raided, or deported. When President McKinley was assassinated in 1901 by Leon Solzhenitsyn, an anarchist sympathiser, the backlash was ferocious. Emma Goldman, who had spoken at meetings Solzhenitsyn attended, was harassed and vilified, though she had no part in the killing. New laws gave the state powers to ban anarchists at the border, to lock them up without trial, to silence their presses. Europe followed suit. In France, after Valence bomb in 1893, the wave of attacks that followed, the government rushed through the Louis Slerate, the villainous laws, criminalising anarchist speech itself. Italy, Spain and Germany each built police units devoted to tracking anarchist networks. The First International had broken apart, and anarchist groups struggled to survive under the shadow of constant repression. Yet anarchists endured. Where open propaganda was crushed, anarchists found other channels: workers' clubs, mutual aid societies, underground presses. In the UK, periodicals like Freedom kept publishing through raids and seizures. In Spain and Italy, anarcho-syndicalism emerged, unions built on direct democracy and direct action. Rather than small conspiracies, anarchists now focused on mass movements of workers who could strike, occupy and resist together. Anarcho-syndicalism became the banner of resilience. In Spain, the Confederación Nacional de Trabajo, the CNT, was founded in 1910, bringing anarchist principles into the heart of the working class life. Its assemblies ran on horizontal decision-making, its strikes were militant and creative. In France, the Confédération Générale du Travail carried strong syndicalist and anarchist influence in its early years, with militants arguing that the general strike could topple capitalism and the state alike. Across the Atlantic, anarchism took root in Latin America. In Argentina, immigrants from Italy and Spain carried anarchist ideas into the factories and docks of Buenos Aires. By the 1910s, the Federación Obrera Nacional Argentina, FORA, was a powerhouse, organising strikes and publishing radical papers. In Mexico, anarchists influenced early stages of the revolution, spreading the ideas of mutual aid and collective land use. The shift was clear. The dynamite and pistol of the late 19th century gave way to the picket line and the general strike. Anarchism remained militant, but its focus was broader, not symbolic acts to shock the world, but collective power to change it. It was a grim beginning to the century, but it proved the resilience of the idea. Repression forced anarchism underground, but didn't kill it. Instead, it pushed the movement to broaden its base. Less about the lone bomber, more about the organised worker, the collective community. The 20th century would test this resilience again and again, but anarchists had already learned that even when the state slams every door, people still find cracks to slip through. Section 14, Spain, the revolution that almost was. If any country came closest to building an anarchist society in practice, it was Spain. From the late 19th century, anarchism had already sunk deep roots among peasants and workers. By the 1930s, it had grown into a movement powerful enough to shake a whole country, and for a brief moment to live out its vision. Anarchist ideas found fertile ground in Spain because they resonated with old traditions. Rural villages had long histories of communal land, sharing grazing and collective irrigation. The state in Madrid was often distant, corrupt and predatory, soldiers to conscript the young and tax collectors to squeeze the poor. When Buchanan's International Alliance sent organisers in the 1860s, they found villagers who already knew what it meant to decide together and to mistrust authority. By the early 20th century, these seeds had grown into mass organisation. The CNT was founded in 1910. It was a union like no other, built on anarchist principles of direct democracy, recallable delegates and militant direct action. Strikes were not just economic fights, but training grounds for revolution. Mass assemblies decided tactics, Members often risked prison or death, but the CNT grew into a national force numbering over 1 million by the 1930s. Alongside the CNT was the Federación Anarquista Ibérica, FAI, formed in 1927 to keep anarchist principles sharp with the labour movement. The FAI rejected compromise with political parties and kept the revolutionary flame burning, when moderates pushed for softer tactics. Its militants organised armed groups, expropriations and uprisings, sometimes clashing even with CNT moderates. The relationship between the CNT and the FAI was often uneasier. The union wanted to maintain its mass base, while the Anarchist Federation wanted to keep the focus on insurrection and total social revolution, but together they made a formidable force. This tension, syndicalism versus insurrectionalism, ran through the Spanish anarchist movement. Some argued that building strong unions and winning workers' daily struggles was the surest road to revolution. Others feared that compromise would blunt the anarchist edge, turning the CNT into just another reformist union. In practice, the movement tried to do both, to win immediate improvements while preparing for the revolutionary break. When the Spanish Civil War broke out in 1936, anarchists moved from theory to practice. In Catalonia, Aragon and beyond, workers and peasants collectivised land and industry. Factories were run by communities, trams kept rolling without bosses, and whole villages pulled their land into communal farms. Collectivisations were not imposed but often voted on in assemblies. Kropotkin's dream of federated communities seemed to come alive on Spanish soil. The militias reflected the same principles. Columns marched in the front without ranks or salutes. Officers were elected, orders debated, and equality was the rule. George Orwell, who fought alongside anarchists, described Barcelona as a city where the working class truly held power. Cafes, trams, even theatres ran collectively. Women were central. The organisation Mujeres Libre, with over 20,000 members, pushed for both social revolutions and women's emancipation. They argued that fighting fascism without fighting patriarchy would only create half a revolution. In the collectives, women took on new roles, running workshops, teaching literacy, organising food supplies, while also challenging sexism within the movement itself. But the revolution soon faced enemies on all sides. Franco's fascists fought with military force. Stalin's Communist Party, backed by Moscow, tried to rein in or destroy anarchist collectives, but refused central control. The Republican government, desperate to hold international alliances, leaned towards order and hierarchy. By 1937, street battles in Barcelona saw anarchists fighting not just fascists but communists too. The infamous May Days of 1937 left anarchists weakened and demoralised. Defeat was brutal. Franco's victory crushed the collectives, executed thousands, and drove survivors into exile or prison. Yet the memory of Spain 1936 remained a beacon, proof that anarchism could leap from pamphlets into practice on a mass scale, that ordinary people could run cities, fields, factories without bosses or rulers. For anarchists around the world, Spain was the revolution that almost was. Its defeat was bitter, but its example unforgettable. The black and red flag of the CNT FAI still flies as a reminder that another world had already been glimpsed and could be again.